Nationers, last year I went to an Oklahoma City Thunder versus a Dallas Maverick game in Dallas, Texas. And one of the things that I did was bought merch. And when I talked to the guy, he was like, man, it's been a long day. We had a hockey game before and now the basketball game at night. And it got me thinking, that's incredible that he was able to get through a super long shift and still have a very cheery attitude. But then it also got me thinking, there must be a lot to go from yet alone a hockey game to a basketball game. The logistics must be nuts. Well, luckily for us, Wendover Productions made a video titled How Arenas Transform Overnight. This goes for pretty much every game in arena. Now, hopefully this gives us the answers that we're looking for in regards to how does an arena transform from one sport and event to another. Let's get right into it.
At 9:31 p.m., the buzzer sounds, and the Chicago Blackhawks' November 6th
So
game
hockey.
against
We're on
the Detroit
hockey.
Red Wings ends with a 4-1 loss.
Very nice.
Less than 22 hours later, the Chicago Bulls game against the Minnesota Timberwolves begins. So within seconds, the process of converting
So this
United
is like an
Center's floor
overnight
from a
thing.
hockey rink to a
Interesting.
basketball court begins. First up is the broadcast crew, who quickly remove the remotely operated cameras mounted on the glass. Simultaneously, others roll up the rubber mats that cover the ground through the Zamboni tunnel so that ice crews and others on skates can walk
Must
around
be so
safely.
interesting, right?
Waiting behind them is the conversion crew. 50-odd people,
Broadcast.
some full-time United Center employees, but most part-timers that come in after their regular jobs. Much of the crew waits by
cool.
with the glass carts, which roll through the Zamboni
So it's like
tunnel as it's
semi-voluntary
clear.
part-time.
These carts
Okay,
are
cool.
color-coded. Red corresponds to the east glass, black for the west side, and white for the glass surrounding the benches.
Oh, and especially
the center.
hockey, they gotta get all
Removing
of
the
that
Is as
glass?
simple as applying a suction cup, pulling upward, and grabbing the connector between each pane. The process moves
Oh, that must be
fast.
so
It takes
interesting.
just a few seconds per piece, and if anything, it's limited by how fast the crews can put the pieces away in the cart.
Right.
While this
Yeah,
occurs,
that makes sense.
cleaning crews move through the sections of
Oh,
seats on the two
I feel so
far
bad
ends of the rink.
for any cleaning
These
crew.
areas will entirely transform over the coming hours, so their cleaning is prioritized.
Can't get alcohol anywhere.
Work can begin.
Try not to trip
And they
over
specifically
things.
start
Oh.
on the west side since they'll soon need a forklift, and the forklift can't currently access the rink. The slope on the Zamboni tunnel is too steep, so
Okay.
they need to remove the seats that are currently covering the corner tunnel. In addition to cleaning,
Oh,
others
man.
work on other small details to prep these seats for conversion.
That
removing
priority list must be
cabling,
nuts.
Railings, and other small elements. Within just 25 minutes of the buzzer going off, as the final few fans are still in the arena, the last pieces of glass come down. Up
Man,
until
that must be nuts. Doing this like a lot. Like there's a lot of hockey games, NBA games. There's a lot of other events going on in these arenas, especially on the off days. You have to be dotting your I's and crossing your T's actively.
At this point in the process, the crews have taken advantage of the coarse ice created through 20 minutes of third-period professional hockey to provide traction as they work. But with the next stage in the
Right.
process involving covering the ice, it's now time for the Zamboni to come out and resurface it. After all, the ice is always there. From preseason through playoffs, no matter if there's a basketball game or a concert, courts, stages, whatever is always built on top of the ice, as unlike essentially every other element needed for any United Center event, laying down the ice is a time-consuming process involving days of careful layering.
Oh my. I've seen some. I don't know if it goes for every single one, every arena, because I feel like I've seen some like take apart or disassemble to some aspect. Ice is hard. You got to get a nice thin layer. It's not too thick, but imagine that. You'd be so cold too, because they got to keep that cold. Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that.
Placement of lines, logos, and advertisements. It's just not practical to lay down new ice for each game. And
That makes
maintaining
sense. That
NHL
makes a lot of
quality
sense.
Ice is no easy feat. So as much as resurfacing the ice immediately is about
Arena
prepping it
crews
for its
hate
next
having
use,
an
it's
NHL
also
team in
about
their
ensuring
city.
that it stays high quality even as an NBA game happens on top of it. As the Zamboni does its work, part of the crew gets a brief break, but others continue work on the seating. This is one of the more complex parts of the process, as the entire geometry of the playing area changes from hockey to basketball.
Yeah.
An NBA court is less than half as long and almost half as wide as an NHL rink, meaning there's plenty more room for seating. In fact, all in all, 1,200 additional seats are installed during the conversion. The main difference is that seating extends closer to the playing surface, far past the hockey boards, but there are also other subtler differences. In rink mode, the Zamboni needs access, which requires having a large tunnel
Makes
on one
sense.
end. In addition, players' access changes between sports. With hockey, tunnels extend directly to the benches
Oh,
on
that must
one
be a
side of the
nightmare.
arena, whereas in basketball, there's access via tunnels on all four corners,
Oh,
both for
gosh.
players and for those sitting in courtside seats. So that's all to say. Essentially, the entire seating configuration near the floor changes between hockey and basketball.
Oh, that's so
To
rough.
achieve this in a matter of hours, the area seating sits on telescopic platforms. The individual seats fold down flat, then section by
Imagine
section
it doesn't
retract
work, though.
automatically. Once in their compact
Imagine
state,
it doesn't
crews
work.
use a lifting platform to move them away from the wall. These essentially operate like a hovercraft, shooting air at the ground to reduce the effective weight of these massive seating sections so that workers can push them around with simply their own strength. This side, with seating extending further down, is for hockey, whereas the side closer to the wall is for basketball, as in the basketball configuration,
Oh, I
the seating
see that.
sections only go down
Oh.
as far as the top of the boards rather than the bottom of the boards to allow for more seating past the boards given these smaller court
Right,
size.
right, right.
For now, the workers flip the seating sections around.
That's
but
so
the basketball
unique.
side now faces the rink. As the Zamboni
What?
goes up, a few other assorted off-rink activities occur. A couple people work to
I'm-
remove the corner
my
sections of boards,
mind is
as
blown
these are
right
where
now.
the access tunnels will eventually be. A few others mop the floor previously covered by the telescopic seating, while
This truly blows my mind because whoever invented this whole logistical nightmare invented the machines to make sure that you can flip and one retracts further, and oh my.
one person presses the button to automatically retract the netting used to catch stray pucks. Additionally, others go and stage the next round of materials. During hockey games, all the basketball components are stored in one large room underneath one of the
They're-
long sides of the arena.
Right.
The room is always organized the exact same way so
That's
that each cart is
facts. I love
accessible
that.
when it's needed. The glass carts used first are closest to the door, whereas the pieces of the actual basketball court needed last are furthest. With the Zamboni now done,
Makes sense.
crews bring out risers, some small seating sections, and rubber flooring. One crew gets to work converting the benches where hockey players sit. They start with filling in the bench access tunnels with platforms, then affixing seating on top of them. Each tunnel takes up the space of 16 seats, so considering
so
how
unique.
close the seats are to the action,
They have to
filling
make
these
it look
in
so
adds
good
up to
too, right?
Thousands of dollars of additional revenue. There's also space within what was the benches, so the crews also place risers and seats within them. As this goes on, others
Oh my
quickly
goodness.
work to cover the rink in 530 different pieces of insulated plywood flooring. Most of this is fairly straightforward, equally sized rectangles that fit together easily. Where it gets tricky is towards the corners. To account for the curve, each piece is cut for its precise spot, and therefore placing any of the 530 pieces incorrectly will throw off the whole process. The last piece is the trickiest. On this night, it refuses to easily slot in, requiring the crew to remove some pieces and rework the placement as the rest of the crew watches on, waiting to be able to get to the next step in the conversion.
That'd just be so,
The
like,
ones
that
in,
delay would
they'll
be
lock the
nuts.
flooring in place, assuring it doesn't slip even a bit. Small spacers are hammered in around the edges. Now,
That
this
must be
point in the
so
process
nuts.
is where the next steps sometimes diverge. While NHL hockey and NBA basketball represent the core of United Center's programming, the arena also hosts concerts, comedy shows, even the Democratic
Kudos out to
National
all of these
Convention.
people, to be honest.
Most comedy shows and certain concerts use United Center's in-house setup. Using these materials, they're able to set up a variety of simple configurations. Larger concerts from bigger acts, though, typically bring their own staging, so the United Center conversion crew gets the rink converted to this point, then the tour staff takes it from there. This can lead to some long nights. Not only do concerts last longer, but the loadout of the tour's equipment often takes 2 to 4 hours before the in-house crew can even start.
That's right, because we went to a concert in May and like it got delayed, like the doors open got delayed, and I was like, man, I'm like, I swear like concerts are supposed to like stop at 11 or something here in Washington. We apparently a few venues don't have like curfews apparently, so like that thing could go until like 2 a.m. if it wanted to.
Their conversion. And the timeline of when a rink conversion needs to be done by isn't the start of the next game. It's actually around 10 a.m. when the visiting team is allowed to use the ice for practice. So this leads to some long hours and late nights
Oh,
for
man.
the crew, especially when the schedule leads to back-to-back-to-back conversions. Things get even more complicated in playoff season, as there's often no knowing whether a rink or court is going to be needed for a
Oh,
game
that would be
until
so
the
rough.
previous game
You're just
finishes.
on call,
And there are
pretty
even
much.
some slight variations to the rink and court setups that they need to pay attention to. When an NHL game is broadcast nationally, for example, the broadcaster brings in additional cameras and also set up an additional broadcasting position rinkside, which is why this glass sits here on the glass cart on this particular night. It was taken out since it was a national broadcast night.
Right.
But this November conversion was, at least relatively, simple. The
Then they're just
rink-to-court
all on the
transformation
ice. That's
crew is
insane.
most used to. Next in the process is measuring. They use tapes and chalk to mark out where the corner of the court should go. Considering it's far smaller than the rink, getting its location right is important to ensure the geometry of the seating that will surround it works too. Then the court comes out. Unlike the rest of the materials, the court itself is stored in a standalone temperature-controlled room. After all, it's the most crucial, hardest to replace element of the basketball setup, and there's only one of
That's so
them.
unique. I
Each
love
piece is
courts,
the
by the
same
way. They're
size,
so
but
cool.
it still must be assembled in an exact order due to the lines, logos, and advertisements painted on top, so they're each individually numbered. Part of the crew lays out each piece in roughly the right place, while others follow behind and deal with the precise placement using a mallet to align the pieces as tightly as possible. And precision is key. Any slight misalignment with the first pieces will compound the further they go on. A gap between flooring pieces is
Crooked
unacceptable for
NBA court,
play,
that'd be so
if
funny.
that happens, they'll have to go back and redo their work. While this goes on, work continues on the seating. Now rotated, the telescopic seating is extended out again.
That
Then
better
these
be
pieces
rubber.
of
Oh,
are
goody.
placed in
Oh,
between each
okay.
section so that there's no gap. Unlike when in hockey mode, the front of these seating sections now only go as low as the top of the boards rather than the bottom. The arena uses this additional height and the shorter length of the basketball court to fit in additional
Within
rows
2
of
hours.
seating.
That's insane.
Small sections are rolled out by hand to fit in the corners, but the bulk of these rows is brought out by forklift and carefully placed in front of
Watch
the
your
boards.
head.
Once
There are
all in place,
25
these
seats
seating
right
units
above you
too
right
will
now.
extend out automatically all the way down to court level. On the long sides of the court, risers are placed in front of the boards to provide a slightly elevated sightline for the backmost row of courtside seats. These coveted seats are placed one by hand, eventually fully surrounding the court. The team also brings in the tables where league officials, TV announcers, broadcast staff, and other personnel sit during games, as well as the digital advertising boards positioned in front of them. Setting up the hoops is one of the last steps. First, they flip the shot clock up into position, affix its support wires to the backboard, then extend the stanchion up to its full height. From there, it's all about calibration, assuring the hoop is level, the
It has to be
backboard is
far
level,
enough too,
and that the
right?
both are exactly where they're supposed to be relative to the court below. There's also a quick check that the rim hinges down under pressure as it's supposed to during a slam dunk, but if not, there's always the backup.
There's
hoop in the
always a
storage room that they
backup.
can
Let's
swap
go.
out at a moment's notice.
Oh my
At
gosh.
this point, only small
All this on
finishing
ice,
touches
too.
remain.
All
Dealing
of
with the
this on
last few
ice.
bits of wiring, putting the last few seats in place, and performing final inspections.
Oh, man.
With that, the conversion crew is done. The clock just hit midnight, meaning the entire process, from the first panes of glass coming off to the last seat getting positioned in place, took almost exactly 2 hours and 30 minutes.
That's
It's an
impressive. I wonder
incredible
what the
feat,
fastest
and they'll do it
turnover
all over
is.
again the next night. After the Bulls game, they're converting the arena into a stage.
I mean, I guess if you put it like that, yes, there are going to be some people like he mentioned that are part-time people that coming in after their, regular jobs. At least like it is 2 hours. At least it's not like another 5 to 8 hours. I guess it isn't the worst thing in the world, and especially saying that like you have a bunch of people working on it. I'd be a little bit more stressed. Oh man, everyone's sick.
Set up for a comedy show, then 2 nights later, the rink will return for the Blackhawks, followed by another overnight conversion to court for the Bulls.
That'd be so
Across
rough.
November
And then back to
alone,
the
they'll
Blackhawks.
convert the arena 21 times, working tirelessly to bring Chicago its entertainment,
40-hour month?
no matter which surface it requires. As you can possibly tell, we actually filmed this video in person at United Center. This was a really great opportunity that not only allowed us to get
That's
this
pretty
footage,
cool. I'm glad
but
that they
also all the
allowed them to
information
have
that has
the,
allowed us to make, to my knowledge, the most detailed video on how
really,
arena
really cool.
conversions work on YouTube. Of course, flying to Chicago and filming this was expensive, so I think this video is also a testament to the benefits of injecting a little more budget than the YouTube
Oh,
business
is
model
this
can
a
typically support.
sponsored
To be
segment?
honest, we can't afford to fly out to film every video.
This is a
but
sponsored
that's
segment,
why
isn't
we're
it?
Part of Nebula.
You know what? I love Nebula. I really do. Nebula is like a really cool idea. I am so glad that they have it. As a viewer of this video, that they got to fly out and actually, record this, because that whole process must be insane. Nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like and of course, subscribe.